right, hello everyone. Welcome back to D-Pod. All right, so today we have a different episode. I'm not sure what I'm calling it right now. My note says AGE-onomics because today we have Age. And Age is Anezi, Gisselle, and Eden. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Nice. Welcome to D-Pod. How are you guys feeling right now?
Nervous?
Nervous.
A little nervous.
My palms are sweaty.
We have tissues. We're ready, though.
Yes. I was really confused why they brought tissues, but
It's sweaty palms.
Nice. Well, so, I've been meaning to have you guys on the pod for a while, but finally got around to it. So you have the, I guess, unique vantage point of being the first set of students who went through all 4 years in our UChicago ministry here on the south side. And now you've joined as members and also joining team. And so just wanted to hear about your journeys, just your observations, learnings. I don't know. I think that what you have to share will be very interesting to our students. So let's just get started. For people who don't know who you are, let's just do like some quick basic intros. Okay. So you're, I often refer to you as Age because that's just like the fastest way. I know you guys call yourselves the curly girlies as well.
We have been thus named.
You don't call yourselves that.
Well,
I feel like I've heard you refer to
we have taken it upon ourselves, but we didn't come up with it. I want to give credit where credit is due.
Okay. Would you like to give credit?
Yes, Cheezera came up with it.
Cheezera. Thank you,
Shout out to her.
Nice. Shout out to Cheezera. But my wife told me that I shouldn't call you that. So I'm very careful about anyways. Age. Okay. So could you maybe just tell us what are you doing for a job now? What did you major in at UChicago? All of you are UChicago alum, class of 2022.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just go in age order.
Yeah. So I'm Anezi. Yeah, class of 22. So we're 23 years old now. I majored in Korean or long form East Asian languages and civilizations. And now I am a marketer at Tableau for academic programs.
Nice, which basically means that you're trying to get students to sign up for Tableau so that they'll be lifelong users.
Yeah, wow, that's a really good summary.
Yeah, no problem.
Wow, thanks.
Gisselle?
Oh, I'm Gisselle. I majored in comparative human development, which is basically, it's a very niche major at UChicago. It's like anthropology. You can look it up. But yeah, I do something very different now. Oh, I also minored in statistics, which gives some background. But basically now I work for this payroll software company and I just as an implementation analyst. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, my name is Eden. I majored in global studies and minored in human rights. But now I work in something unrelated, in corporate legal compliance, where I assist big companies with small taxes, tax code. So, yeah.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you enjoy your current jobs right now?
Hey,
they
might be listening.
Honest.
I don't know.
Yeah,
my boss might be a big D-Pod
10.
fan.
What?
I would say I'm at a 4. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right.
Whoa, it's more than I thought.
I also agree.
Okay, my roommates are,
they just both looked at it. They all kind of looked at each other like.
I know. Okay,
4.
I'm lowering it to a 2. I'm lowering it to a 2.
To a 2.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
More realistic. Yeah, I think I'll say a 9 out of 10 just because a 10 out of 10 I think would be if I were dancing. That'd be great.
Oh, wow.
But I have no complaints and I also don't want to look for another job. So 9 out of 10.
Okay. All right. Seem like you're pretty content in your job.
I don't know, maybe a 5. Kind of cheater answer, but I feel kind of indifferent about it now. I feel like in the beginning I was more like, what am I doing? But now I think I'm just grateful that I have a job. It's not what I want to do per se. It's not like a passion, but it's a job.
Yeah.
The pays the bills.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, an interesting follow-up question might be what number would you be content with, right? Because, there's no saying it has to be a 10, right? But yeah, the 2, that's...
Ooh, that question
that's a whole
my answer.
That's a whole nother conversation, actually.
That's a whole other conversation.
But that's interesting. But you have a job right now, and thankful that you have a source of income. Praise the Lord. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
How about let's just start with a little bit of background, okay? So maybe tell us about your spiritual or religious background growing up, before you came to college. All right. So whoever wants to start.
I can start. Yeah, so I was raised in a Christian household. Both my parents became Christian. My dad when he was in college, my mom late high school. And then, yeah, so since growing up, I was always hearing about Jesus, seeing, how my parents experienced like Christian living and following their convictions. But then I didn't myself make the decision until early high school. And then, yeah, I think coming to college was just like taking this childhood faith that was so sweet and like wonderful for me and like trying to graduate it, and see what it would look like as an adult.
Yeah. For me, I grew up going to church sometimes. So my mom would take me and my 3 younger siblings to church. But yeah, I kind of stopped when I moved. But then I kind of, I don't know, forgot about God in a way. I never really thought about him until high school, actually. I think it was more like sophomore year of high school, but even beginning of high school, I feel like I just started thinking a lot more about life. And yeah, I was telling my roommates earlier too, but yeah, I'm very existential. I have a lot of existential thoughts. And I think like, yeah, just different things in high school, like friendship drama and stuff like that triggered like a lot of new existential thoughts about, like, what is my purpose? Like, what is the meaning of life? Why am I here? And I think, yeah, I don't know, it only felt natural to kind of start investigating Christianity seriously, since that was something I kind of grew up hearing about. So, like, I knew the Bible stories and stuff, but yeah, it was only until end of sophomore year when I really started investigating. My mom was going to a new church at a time, so I kind of started going more and actually paying attention and asking questions. And I also had a friend during my junior year. I got really close to her and she was Christian. So she also helped answer a lot of my questions. And I think throughout that year, I also got to see myself as a sinner, someone who had also hurt others, not only been hurt, but also hurt others and hurt God. And yeah, at some point I just made a decision. I don't remember like an exact day, but I remember like praying to God and being like, oh yeah, please forgive me. I'm like, okay, I see now, like the cross makes sense. And yeah, it all makes sense, not just like random stories, but yeah, it was more personal. And then, yeah, I guess that's background.
All right. Yeah, how about Anezi?
Yeah, so for me, my parents, they're very culturally Catholic in the sense that we would go to church or to mass, I guess, on big holidays. So like Christmas or Easter, just all as a family. But then when we were at home, we wouldn't really practice it very much. But very much, it was a lot of saying like, oh, God is good and like he's God and like you should pray to him every night, but definitely not anything beyond that, nor kind of connecting that to Jesus or anything like that. So I think that, yeah, growing up, I didn't really have much of like brain development around what Christianity actually was. It was more of just like, oh, a God exists and he's good and I should pray to him, but not that I knew what prayer really was. But then, yeah, in high school, I had a friend who was Christian, but he didn't really seem very Christian by his actions. And so then I kind of wanted to judge him on the spot, but I didn't really know what a Christian was. So I couldn't really say, hey, you're not being a very good Christian. And so that's kind of that's where high school ended for me, in the sense that I had that kind of, oh, I can't tell him he's not a Christian because I don't know what that is. So maybe I should figure that out. And so that's kind of where I ended off high school and came to college with that curiosity of wanting to figure out, yeah, what is Christianity? And if I call myself Catholic or Christian, like I should know what that means and really kind of figure that out for myself.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So then let's fast forward to college. I know there's a lot to say about our upbringing, but so how did you guys first get connected to our church here in Chicago?
Yeah, so we used to be Sage. Now that we're Age, we used to be Sage. There was an S, and her name was Sarah. And her name is Sarah. She still exists. But yeah, so Sarah and I, over the summer, because I went to a summer program before our first year in college, I had met Sarah, and offhandedly I had told her, oh yeah, I want to look for churches. And it was a good thing, because I would not have woken up on the first Sunday that I was going to look for churches if she was not banging on my door at the time we were supposed to leave to wake me up. So because of that, she kind of just like kept in touch with me, and we would look at different churches on Sundays, and that kept on once the school year started, where she got a flyer for the first Make New Friday event, the welcome night, and I had gotten the same flyer, but I threw it away. But because she got the same flyer and invited me to it, I ended up coming, and yeah, I've been coming ever since.
Wow. Thank goodness for Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that the very first Make New event ever?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Anezi's an OG.
Was-
An OG.
So are you the earliest out of the three of you to attend the...
I came to the first thing
Sun-
that was ever available.
Oh,
Yeah.
so Eden, you were even earlier.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
okay.
so.
Tell us about yours. How did you get...
Well, it was funny because for a while I was saying, oh, Johanna, Anna, and Kaylee, like, so they were CPIs our freshman year, our first
Church
year.
plant interns.
Yes, church plant interns. On the first day of classes, they were like tabling and giving out donut holes around 9 a.m., right when classes started. And I was walking with my roommate and I hadn't eaten breakfast, and they were there, and I was like, oh, you know, free breakfast. I might as well, you know, just stop by. And then when I was there, they had like a question. I was like, oh, what fills the hole in your heart? And I was like, oh, family or something. I wrote it down because I just wanted my breakfast to, you know, to go. I wrote it down, and then I always said like it was Joanna or Kaylee, but it was actually Aurora, who was here from Northwestern,
Oh.
assisting for like Welcome Week.
Right, right.
Who noticed that I was wearing a cross necklace, and she was just very pointedly like, oh, are you a Christian? And I was like, oh, I am. And then she's like, oh, we're a Christian group. And I was like, no way. And then she invited me to a boba like social thing that they were doing at Te Amo. And so I was like, oh, sure, I'll be there. And then I was there, and they had board games, and I'm very competitive, so I really enjoyed it. And I was like, plus they're Christian, plus they're fun, like let me go to Sunday too. And then that's first Sunday, yeah, I was there.
And was that the house church?
That was house church
at the Old Kim Park,
at
right?
Old Kim Park, yeah, in
Yeah.
the living room.
Yeah, for people who don't know, that's on, what is that, 57th
Yep.
and Kim Park, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
By Medici.
By Medici, yeah. Yeah, that's neat. Wow. Can I ask, Eden, like, because did you look at other churches, or like you just came to ours and that was it, or?
Yeah, well, it was relatively, I mean, it was early on. So like
Okay.
I felt like I had just gotten on campus, and I was like still getting my bearings, but I wanted to go to a church, but I also didn't want to search that hard. You know, like I didn't have like a drive to be like, oh, I have to find a church. And I guess that goes into my story too, like how much I value church versus like individual like growth by myself with Christ. But I wasn't like set on finding a church. And so, yeah, I fully think that like if I hadn't met someone that first week, or maybe like second week of autumn quarter, I wouldn't have ever like ended up really getting like plugged into a church, any church, because that's just where I was at that point.
I see.
Yeah.
Could you, I mean, since you approached it, could you just talk about that a little bit more? Like, so part of your stories, it seems like you're saying maybe you were focused on maybe just individual growth as a Christian, but your understanding of church maybe, could we just talk about that?
Yeah. So I'm Eritrean. So growing up, there wasn't that many like Eritrean youth with me. And so there was never really like I felt like an available like church community for me growing up. And so I really had to rely on like Bible studies with my parents, like at home, you know, just us. Or how can I personally grow in my relationship with Christ like, by myself, you know? And there wasn't a community to really do that with. And so, yeah, whenever I like thought about church, I was always like, oh, that would be so nice. But isn't that needed? Like I was saved, and like I love Jesus, but then I never really had that strong church experience, you know, growing up. And so coming into college, it was like an added plus. If I could find a church that I could get plugged into, then great. But if I didn't, then I could be Christian without it, was my mentality. And I feel like it was only really after my first year at UChicago when I realized, oh, the church is actually vital. Like it was a mercy from God that I was able to, that church found me, as opposed to just kind of letting me go through college without finding a community.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really neat. Because I know that some people, they come into college and they're like, you know, looking for a church, or, you know, people can like shop around for a while. And that's good, actually. I do recommend that, because I think people need to find where they can grow.
Yeah.
But I think the key thing that causes most growth is if you actually ground yourself in a community, right? And, you know, I guess for you, since you weren't like looking for a particular, you just, you know, you found the community and you were content with that,
Yeah.
right? And then hopefully your story is that through that you were able to grow. So
Yeah. Actually, what I will say really quickly though is something that the reason why I like stayed that first Sunday was I was like, oh my goodness, they're all so young. Like,
Oh, yeah.
like that was the most shocking thing to me was that people like 20s and 30s could give their like lives to Jesus.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
Meaning like where they're living and like how they're spending all of their time and like all of that. Like that was very shocking to me because without a church community, the only reference was my parents. And like I think as a kid, you're like, oh, my parents work like everybody else, you know, like what, you know, you don't really notice like, oh, I could be a young person giving my entire life, career and like whatever to serving Christ or like, you know, just following Christ. So that's why I was so shocked by that I was like, oh, let me stay and like investigate. Like what could get young people not just to be like saved, but like saved into a mission, you know, like I was so curious and like so shocked by it.
That was just different from what you saw?
Yeah.
Because your parents...
They were older by the
right?
time
So,
that
yeah.
I was born, you know?
See,
so I was like, oh, they're like, I mean, my parents are
Right,
older than
right.
I think most of my friends' parents. So they were like, you know, 50s and 60s. And I was like, well, like, you know, like that's the age to give your life to, you know,
Right.
to give your life.
I see.
Morning, afternoon,
Okay.
and night to God. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys, either Anezi or Gisselle, do you have any thoughts on that? Yeah, because I remember, I think Anezi, like, I remember, like, for you too, it struck you that this church was so young. Maybe it was different. Was it also because it was different from your experience growing up?
Yeah, so since when I was younger, we would go to like Catholic Mass. It was like usually on like huge holidays where it's like 1,000 people coming into this one church. And then like this old guy will come and like preach on stage or the front area. And then I kind of just try and stay awake. And it was in Spanish. So it's like, that's kind of what I knew to be church. And so when I was looking at different churches over the summer, because I did come to see maybe 3 or 4 different churches in Hyde Park before checking out our church, I think that I definitely saw something slightly smaller and more cozy and more communal in those other churches, but it was still very much family focused in the sense that there would be multi-generations in that church. And so the messages would also be kind of broader messages so that maybe everyone can try and grab something out of this message instead of pointed towards something that a college student specifically needs to hear. And I think that when I came to our welcome night, it was AJ, who's in Seattle now, doing like slam poetry, and then like Noah just, I don't know, talking how he does, so like so passionate, and just like seeing all of these young people on like this stage, like with these funky lights like everywhere, and I'm like, oh, this is not what church was back then. Even like in the other churches, that's not what church looked like. And then everyone was so quick to like, I was so quick to have a person to connect with me. And I actually also interacted with Aurora at the book table that night. But just seeing all of these different young people, it really made it stick out as kind of like, oh, like these messages are talking to young people like us. Like it was like something that everyone here could relate over, instead of, oh, there's this message that it's about managing your finances. What finances do I have? I'm like 18 years old. So I think that really made the church relatable.
Yeah. This is really interesting to hear. I mean, I mean, I think we're still a young church, but back then it was really young, right? I mean, the guys, when they planted, they were like 25, 26.
That's crazy.
Right?
2 years older than us. Just like
2 years older than you now.
Yeah.
And imagine eight of your friends just going to a brand new city, like 1,200 miles away or whatever it is from their homes. And I'm like, all right, we're just going to start reaching out to people here, right?
That's like amazing,
So it's pretty wild, actually. And and I think it does depend on what people are looking for, because I think there's something to be said about the multi-generational church model. I actually think that's one of the overt weaknesses of our church in Chicago, which is that we can't offer that. Like, I mean, we can offer it network wide. Like this past weekend, we were trying to get certified for coaching, and we were with some older ones, like people who are 10, 15, 20 years older than us, and it was really nice because they have life experiences that I don't have, and I just learned a lot by just being with them and just asking them a lot of questions and things like that. And so, there's something beautiful to that. But like to Eden's point, there's also something like really compelling about a bunch of young people who are really excited and sold out for something. And I think maybe that's one of the strengths that we try to lean into. and then I think we should really, like, while our church is still young, like we have energy, right? Like we should use it and expend it for the Lord. So yeah, thankful to hear that was your experience. So as you guys think as you think about your journey in college, like what are some highlights? Just, I'll leave it pretty open-ended. Like, what are some highlights for you? What was the formative thing that God was doing in your life, right? I'm sure there's multiple, but if you had to just choose one angle, like, what was that thing? And it could be, maybe it's through an event, it could be a longer period, it could be through a challenge. So I'll leave it open-ended for you.
I think for me, it's more of a longer term thing, but yeah, I think coming into college, I wasn't really looking for a church. I think I was kind of jaded about church. Yeah, just for different reasons. I just thought people were generally like hypocrites. So yeah, it's kind of crazy how I started coming out. Like, I started coming out more in my second year, actually. Yeah, like I met our church through like Science and Faith Talk my first year, and I got connected to the CPIs, but then I didn't start coming until later. And I think I started coming because I started feeling very lonely. I felt like, oh yeah, I can't really do Christian life on my own. And I thought I had learned that lesson, like by second year, realizing that and starting to come out. But I think it took more years to really start to open up and really trust people just with my story, or just telling them different things. Even now, I think sometimes it's still hard to be open and to talk. I am much more of a listener. I think talking is definitely like more out of my comfort zone. But yeah, I think my whole life I've also just longed for friendship and deep connection. And I think being at this church, I've realized, oh yeah, like I can't have that unless I am open and talk to people like my peers, or even especially older people, which it's something I find hard to do, like just older, like authority figures or people I see as authority figures. But yeah, it's been really helpful just trying to push myself, or, like people like Kata helping me out and like scheduling office hours, things like that. And just getting to practice it throughout the years. I think now it's a lot easier to be more open and not be as fearful of what will people say? Because I think that's something I really struggled with throughout college. Yeah, and I think especially COVID made it really hard, but and that took a lot of like reaching out to people, which was really hard. I don't really like reaching out for or asking for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I realized I totally didn't ask you the last question. So you snuck it in there, the Science and Faith Talk. So that's how you first got connected. That's great. Thanks for weaving that in there.
That's pretty smooth, to be honest.
That was pretty smooth. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Talking has become your forte now.
But yeah, the openness things is really hard, right? Because, I don't know, like, maybe life teaches us to be guarded, or sometimes we're explicitly told to be guarded. Like in my upbringing, I was told, like, you don't share that kind of stuff with people outside the family, right? And so that's hard for many reasons. Like, what were some things that like helped you or gave you courage throughout the years to like take those little steps of faith to exercise that?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of people reaching out to me first. So yeah, I don't know, I just randomly remember people like Hannah Park, my second year. She's really good at initiating conversations and just asking really good questions. She's really good at coaching.
Yeah, she is.
So yeah, I remember my second year, I was struggling with like friends from my house friends. I was really close to them, but yeah, I was just starting to have some problems with them. And then just Hannah would sit next to me and like ask me questions, and then somehow it would lead to those friends. And then I don't know, she was just really good at bringing things out that I was like, oh, I didn't think I would share about this today. But here we are. And I think just people like Hannah Park just asking those really good questions, and me being able to talk about those things that I would otherwise just be silent about was very helpful. And then I think, like I mentioned, just going through really like hard situations like COVID. I think that was really hard for me, and I think that just forced me to talk about it too. Especially because I was living in an apartment with Anezi and Sarah, and I feel like it's just really hard to hide when you're living with other people and you see them every single day,
Yeah.
like COVID time.
So is that like you guys had to talk to each other as a result of being together, or is that what you're referring to? Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
like it's just hard to hide. Especially, I don't know, my roommates, they're very observant and would ask me, "Hey, are you mad? Or why haven't we seen you like the past 3 days?"
Yeah.
I'm like, well, can't lie.
You thought you were being a lot more like
Subtle.
subtle, but it's
not.
obviously on your face or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've learned that over the years.
Yeah,
I
that's-
can't really hide things.
Yeah, I think that's a whole nother podcast about like just the living together aspect,
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
what is the role of that in Christian discipleship. I think that's a whole fascinating topic, but maybe don't have time to get into it today. But
It's a good topic.
it's a good topic. Yeah, and I'm sure you guys have stuff to say about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's why so many of the, if you've noticed, like a lot of our guys, they'll cite times from when they used to live together with 20 other guys, right? And
Yeah.
I think maybe for dudes, like you need like 20 guys, because maybe like the percentage of guys who will bring things up is smaller.
2%.
So if you have 20,
1.5%.
if you have 20 guys, one person will bring something up. So.
If you have three people will bring something up.
No, I feel
I know.
like it like
That's interesting.
it makes your growth or like your ability or your like telling people what you're thinking like you have to if it's only 3 of you.
Yeah. And then as painful as that process is, you look back on it and you're like, okay, that was good.
Yeah.
So
I grew. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Yeah. So okay, how about the others? Yeah, I think so. I guess the larger topic is, how did God form you in college?
For me, I think, I really realized, so I say a lot that in high school or even just like before college, I didn't really think a lot. I didn't have many thoughts. But then in college was kind of when I started having a lot of thoughts and thinking a lot more. And so I really realized kind of just the patterns that I had from high school and just from dealing with different issues back home with my family. Like, I realized that escapism was kind of my big idol. Like, that was how I would cope, and that became my idol. And so that meant that I was obsessed with a lot of things because I have a very obsessive personality as well. And so I was obsessed with emo music at one point, with anime at another point, with K-pop at another point. And so that obsession with K-pop became Nexus Dance Collective at UChicago, which is a K-pop dance club that I had started. And so with that came just not only my obsession with K-pop and BTS, but also a bigger time sink of putting all of this, I guess, all of my love and commitment and like my stability emotionally into this one club. And I think that I didn't really think on a deeper level in regards to, why do I like spend so much time like doing these things that ultimately, I'm not happy in the end, or I get really stressed out by this, or why am I on Twitter all day when people just like get mad at you on Twitter all day, And so I think that, that's kind of something that I learned just in particular, I think, through the first 2 to 3 years in college. And it definitely took a long time to kind of realize it. It was actually one of your messages, DP, that made me realize it. And like, it was when we were back in Sci A and we were doing messages, or maybe it was Noah, but there was a message about idolatry. And I remember like after that one message, like I was just like crying so much after that message, and I like talked to Kat and I'm like, Kat, I like am about to spend $600 on a BTS ticket. I need you to take half of this money from me right now, or I'm gonna spend it.
Oh yeah.
And then she's like, you can like give it to the church. And I'm like, I don't have a check. I need you to write the check for me right now. I'll like Venmo it to you. And so like,
Oh man, yeah.
just crazy examples of how it took a really long time for me to realize that all of the things that I thought I loved and like gave me happiness and joy, they actually didn't provide that. And when I would look for that type of satisfaction in those things, that it always ended up falling short, always ended up in regrets of my own, or even just, this isn't as good as I thought it was going to be, or it ended up just being much more work than it was, or than I thought it would be. And so I think that that's kind of something that took a really long time for me to learn, but is something that maybe I'm at least halfway through learning, hopefully.
Yeah. You know, I think it's a lifelong process of learning, because I think we learn to let go of certain things, and then something else comes up, right? And people have said that, you know, our hearts are idol factories, right? So, and it's actually, I remember that message. It was the 10 Commandments message. And I think, yeah, because I remember seeing you and Kata talk after the message. And I was like, oh, I hope she's okay. I wonder what's going on. Because I just saw a lot of tissues.
Yeah. Oh, the tissues came back.
And I remember Kata asking me later, like, because of what you were asking her to do, and I'm like, oh, that would look bad if we took money from you, like, right? Like, that doesn't look right. So yeah, like, we don't want to take money from people, like, who are committing to surrender their idols, right? So, yeah, so it was a slightly humorous, but I remember like I actually remember praying for you to respond well to however Holy Spirit was convicting you. So.
God answered your prayer.
Shout out to God.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and then how about you? What are your thoughts from college?
I think, I mean, like when we first started, I didn't really go that much into my testimony, like how exactly I became Christian. But yeah, I think so. I dealt a lot with like deep depression and dealing with like OCD and all of that stuff, and all of that. Like when I became Christian, the thing that got me to really see Christ clearly and like give my life to Christ was seeing just like my sin and my neediness, and how there's nothing in the world that could fill that but Christ. And how like even in my most unresponsive and like, I mean, I was a terrible person during my depression. Like even in that, like Christ loved me and like, you know, cared for me and, you know, died for me in that state. And so that's how I became Christian. And so coming to university, like I was on a spiritual high, you know, like I was like, man, like God is good. I'm a sinner, and you know, I've received this great gift. Like, oh, this is so sweet. And the summer before coming to college, I had visited my uncle's church, and it was like, it was like my first time really far away from home. And I was like serving at that church and like being with the youth, and I was just so like overjoyed and like burdened. I never really felt burdened, you know, and like you know, like for someone's salvation before. So I was coming off of that, coming into UChicago. So it was like a spiritual high. And I think like the thing that I hadn't learned, or that I did learn after 4 years at UChicago, was that like ministry is the call of every believer, and that the joy and the happiness that I experienced following Christ, like, you know, just the sweetness of just praying and like, or going like to the word. It's like Jesus wants that plus you sharing it with others, right? Like what is it love if I just kept all of that to myself and didn't reach out to people? And so after, after coming to like UChicago and then getting plugged in with this church, I was so confused. I was like, wait, like they're sharing the gospel? I had, you know, like I had begun to feel burdened for like the people in my life right before I came to university, but I hadn't seen it as like a call, or I hadn't seen it as like the Great Commission is for every believer. In my mind, it was just, you know, if the puzzle pieces worked out and this clicked here, then hey, maybe you become a minister, you know, and then like, if not, if it doesn't work out that way, then just do it in your free time, or like, I don't know, like just go up to someone in Starbucks once a month and share you know, like that was just kind of my conception of sharing the gospel. But yeah, I think being here, and then as I went from first year to second year to third year, like seeing the younger people in the church and feeling like, oh man, like I really want you to like be excited about Jesus too, or like, oh man, like I see you struggling with this and I actually care, as opposed to, oh, I only care about my own relationship with Jesus. Like that was so foreign and so new to me. And I think having like older people like Vivian to like go to and ask questions regarding like sharing my faith with, you know, cousins, or sharing my faith with friends, like that was just, it was unexpected. And I think the biggest change in me from coming into university and then now as a postgrad is, okay, I am a minister. Like this is my primary identity. Like this is what my life is about at the end of the day. And I didn't have, I think, that realization before I came in.
So what, I mean, I'm picking up like bits and pieces of it from what you just shared, but like, how do you, like, what was helpful for you to go from, you know, ministry as something that's a little bit extra in Christian life to like, actually that's just like, maybe like the fundamental calling for every Christian? Like, how did that shift happen? I mean, I know we do a lot of messages on that, but I'm sure there were like a lot of like other little things. So what were some elements that were helpful for you?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't like underestimate the messages, because I think for me, like, it's easy to like gloss over parts of the Bible that you aren't seeing people live out, you know? So like in the New Testament, when you read the Great Commission, or where, you know, like when you're following, you know, the book of Acts and you're seeing everyone like get saved and then like share, it's easy, like, if you're not seeing it lived out in your own life or with your own eyes, to be like, oh, good for them. Oh man, God was really with the early church. And, you know, praise the Lord that someone reached my parents and then they reached me, you know, but you don't really connect it to like, wait, I should also share the gospel. Like this, you know, like, I'm so like, I can't even explain the joy that I have for receiving the gospel. Now I should also share it, as opposed to just contain it. Like, it's really easy to gloss over that if you're not seeing it lived out. Like, I think, like, I mean, in high school, like, I'd read those passages and be like, oh man, I wish I was there. As opposed to, wait, I can do that with my own life right now, you know? Like, and I think it was messages. So like hearing that clearly said, you know, during service or Bible study, plus seeing like people like go on, you know, mission trips, or seeing people like the staff reaching out to college students and tangibly living out what we were reading, that it made it click for me that, oh, this is for me too. You know, like, I'm also a minister. I couldn't just gloss over those chapters.
I think throughout my undergrad experience, I had that same experience of like, wait, these people are trying to actually live this out. But then my experience of that was that it sort of expanded what was possible. Right. Like, oh, okay, I know that this is what we're supposed to do in theory, but actually there's some people who are actually trying to obey, and they don't do it perfectly, but they're a lot closer than I am. Right. So then like, I wanted to try to live into that. So maybe I can open that question up for Anezi and Gisselle too. 'Cause, you know, this whole thing about, you know, like every Christian being a minister, like that's like a pretty big emphasis at our church. I think we talk about it a lot, and it's written into our way of life, our new way of life, you know, at the Acts 2 Network way of life. So like, how did you, either of you, like, start to adopt that for yourself too? And I think maybe your experiences are unique. So
yeah, I think for me it was also seeing it lived out. I think my first year, it also boggled my mind that these people were so young and that they came from California, like all the way from California to be here. I didn't really understand it. I was like, wow, why would they come to Chicago? Because the only reason I came to Chicago is because I got a scholarship to go to college, you know, that's my incentive. So I always wondered what their incentive was. And that, I knew it was something about, oh, you know, God, I don't know. They love God, I guess. But I think it didn't fully click until, I think, probably senior retreat, honestly. Like, I think it started building up over the years. Like, I started kind of understanding, like, oh, yeah, people need to hear the gospel. But then I think senior retreat, seeing the larger church, and then, I don't know, like, meeting, like, your, like, Kata's, like, you know, leaders, and her talking about, oh, yeah, this is where I used to go shopping, and then I used to walk over here, and me and DP would go over here. And just seeing all the people they knew and all their friends and connections. And I don't know, just this life that, you know, like, you and Kata left behind, and all the staff basically, to come to Chicago. I realized, oh, wow, like, they're taking this call seriously, like, very seriously, because who would do this unless, you know, like, the Great Commission is real? And I think that, plus, like, just seeing that, and I don't know, the 2 Timothy messages that Pastor Ed gave about, you know, like, what's it called? Like, fanning the fire, or the flame into fire, and sharing this gospel to others. I think that became more real as I saw like the larger church and all these connections that our staff have at Berkeley. Yeah, and then I think I got to live it out a little bit too during SLT that summer after I graduated. But yeah, I wish I had seen it earlier. I wish I had like realized and understood, just that call to make disciples of all nations earlier. I feel like, I don't know, sometimes I have some regrets about not doing enough while I was still a student and reaching out to other students. So if you're still a student, you still have time.
Yeah, Anezi, how about you? How did that form for you?
Yeah, so I think that it actually took a really long time for me, just because I would say that I became Christian maybe like my second year. And so after that, I was kind of just like, okay, I should read the Bible and do DT. Let's try that. And that was really hard. To even like wake up consistently for DT is still pretty hard too. But I think that especially in this past year, actually, after graduating, it's become clearer to me. One, I think that after just kind of being put in the situations to do outreach, whether it be like in Georgia when we went on the vision trip, or even just going to like campuses and dining halls, I think that I've kind of learned to appreciate not only just, I'm just here to preach the gospel, but also like, like this could be a person that could become like a friend whose life could be saved. Like this is a whole person, and this isn't just a name that I'm gonna get like in God's book or whatever, you know? And so I think that that's kind of made it a little bit easier, where I'm like, I can meet a cool person that like I'll be excited to like, one, who would listen to like me, a random person coming up to them to like preach the gospel to them. Like if they're like still talking to me after that, they'd have to be pretty nice or pretty kind or pretty cool or whatever. But I think that that's kind of been one incentive just from actually practicing going out and doing it. It makes it a little bit easier knowing like, like even if I get rejected, like, it's like there are people to meet out there, and I'm never going to know who these people are. I'm never going to get to actually interact with these people if I don't go and just do something that I think is a little bit awkward. But then I also think that my heart started to break maybe the end of my fourth year for my non-Christian friends a little bit more, just as I started to kind of engage a little bit more seriously in those kinds of existential, I guess, conversations. Like, like, do you actually think like a life beyond death exists and things like that? And like I remember having a conversation with one of my pretty close friends who I still keep in touch with, and just kind of hearing about how they don't really want to find out, or they don't really think there's anything beyond death. And I think just hearing that, it actually like, I don't know, it made me really sad after that conversation. Just realizing like, like not only are they living their life now with no hope or nothing to look forward to, but also just like, when it comes time, if nothing changes between now and when they die, like I'm never seeing this person again. They're not going to be with me in heaven. And I think that actually like it brought me to tears for the first time. And I think that that's kind of when I realized like, there's an urgency to sharing the gospel, and it's actually really important. It's not just something that like, the Bible says we have to do, so I'm going to just do it and then embarrass myself, but I got better at it. But it's actually something that, is really, it changes people's outcomes. And I want to be able to be someone that can, hopefully see a friend get saved and, just feel that satisfaction of knowing like, wow, this person has a completely new trajectory on life. Especially knowing like, what's there before and after, like, because, I don't know, God can take any person from whatever before they're at and really change that for his purposes. So I think that those were a few of the things that I've really learned or really come to see in the past year in particular. Thanks for sharing that. It's really interesting because I think you first of all, you learn that, okay, everyone's called to be a minister. And so you learn that intellectually. But I think my experience is that over the years, you sort of appreciate different angles and different additional motivations for why we would engage in this. And so that's a little bit of what I'm getting a picture of. Even the three of you, like what really motivated you is maybe a little bit different. And then you'll learn additional ones, right? Because I think for me, how it started was basically just the command. Like,
God says so. So then you do it, right? But then there's these other aspects like, oh, actually, isn't that the loving thing to do? Like to love my friend and to love them by at least taking a chance and sharing with them, right? And whether they respond or not is not up to me, right? But how could I not? Or just sharing in God's heart. Like, what is God's heart? Like when God sees the world, he sees, sheep that are harassed and helpless, without a shepherd. And like, wow. Like, and then you reflect on like how empty this world is, like all of its promises. And then you see like people running towards that so hard. And you're like, it's not going anywhere. Like at the end of it, there's a cliff, right? Like stop running like in that direction. Right. So I think just even emotionally, my motivations for doing it have like, it becomes multifaceted and in different seasons of life, I think also. Yeah. So yeah, I think, you guys have gone through the first couple stages of, experiencing this, but I think, God will show you a lot more in the years to come, and hopefully for me too. So
amen.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing those. So let's talk. So maybe before we like talk about your transition out of college, do you want to give, what advice would you have for a UChicago student?
Dun,
all right.
dun, dun.
I'm just giving you like the open floor here. Like, wow, you can just, all of your wisdom, all right? Your specific wisdom from being UChicago students and now having the hindsight of 2 years out of college, like what it's like on the other side, like what advice or maybe just a word of encouragement do you have for a UChicago student? And you don't have to say it to any particular one, although you can if you want.
Name names.
I mean, yeah. Hey, you? This is what you need to hear.
Called out on Depod.
Maybe I should.
Just have a section
I'll
called
edit
called
that
out.
Called out.
Whoa, new episode.
New episode? Oh, no.
No,
called
no,
out.
no.
Yeah, so whoever's ready, you can start.
I actually have one. It's pretty quick, but I think, a lot of my friends will say that it's not going to sound like it based on what I said before, but a lot of my friends will say that I was the least stressed in college.
She really was.
Nice.
And
I mean, you had enough time to
Sing
do all the dance stuff.
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah, but that's what made it stressful. I felt it with the dance stuff. But yeah, in college, like I had a pretty easy major. I was in humanities, and I don't really like numbers, so I avoided numbers as much as I could. And I think that, despite what I filled that time with, it did give me a lot of extra time to actually pursue coming to church things if I wanted to come to church things, going to dance practice if I wanted to go to dance practice, like actually enabling myself to have that time without feeling the stress that a lot of people at UChicago feel, where they're like, oh, all of my friends around me are in the reg right now. I really don't want to go to the reg right now because I don't actually have work to do.
And the reg is the library, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. And so I realized that a lot of times I would be the only one not studying, and I'm like, what is everyone busy doing?
Thesis.
Yeah, I avoided the thesis on purpose. I dropped my major twice because I found out it had a thesis. But basically, moral of the story is that I think it's totally worth it to find, I don't know if it's like finding a major or finding just what you're studying, like finding ways to not make yourself more stressed than you have to be, because I think that's a special talent that UChicago has, and just making people feel more stressed than they need to be, or even just whether it's your circle or your classes that are that are saying, oh, you have to spend like 30 hours on this piece set or whatever. Kind of just, it took a while to realize, but one, taking 3 classes instead of 4 is okay. And then also, not every grade is worth it. Yes. And very tangibly, I remember we had Vision 2020. I don't know what that, like some sort of mini retreat. And for Vision 2020, I had 3 midterms due that same night that Vision started. And I also was teaching maybe around 20 hours of dance classes that week as well. And I'm like, goodness. I'm going to die. And one of those midterms was history. And history is one of my absolute worst topics, and I remember just being so stressed about it, and then at some point I'm just like, you know what, it told me to write 3 essays, I'm only writing 2, and that's just gonna be enough for this midterm. And at the end of the day, I'm graduated and it was all okay. So yeah, I think it's okay. Like, it's okay to not take. Yeah, you should take education seriously, but learning what taking education seriously is versus learning what making this grade like the definition of your life, learning that difference and really choosing what's more valuable and important to you in that time.
Yeah. I promise I'm not gonna comment after everyone's advice, but I just have to say this because so in the book Fuel in the Flame by Steve Shadrach and Paul Wooster, they say this thing that I love because I would love to say this, but I feel like I'll get in trouble, so I don't. But this is what they say. This is what they say, which is like everyone, like a lot of college students go to college, a lot of Christian college students go to college, and their goal is to do as well as they can in college, right? And of course, we talk about stewarding your college education well, right? And, you know, that's important for character, and, you know, you don't want to be a lazy bum. Like, you should learn how to work hard, right? Work heartily in the Lord. But the point they make is, where in the Bible does it say that you have to get really good grades? Like, and he asks you to consider, why do you think God placed you on that college campus? Is it so that you can maximize your grades? What biblical basis or what biblical reasoning allows you to come to that conclusion? Versus, what if God placed you there because that's a mission field that you uniquely have access into because you're a student there, right? And of course, again, you should be a good witness there, which means that you should try hard, right? But what's more important, obeying God or getting good grades, right? So, I don't know, he just puts it so like plainly, and I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So we're totally gonna read that book this year.
I can confirm that that's in the book.
You've read it?
I'm reading it.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Yes. So I actually bought like 30 copies of it. So
my goodness.
So we can do it with all of our core students here. So
Yeah,
look forward to that. So anyways, advice. Yeah. So Eden or Gisselle.
Now, I just wanted to comment on Anezi's too. I think it sounds crazy, like, oh, don't focus so much on your grades. I think it sounds crazy to say that, but it has to be said because UChicago people are too focused on their grades, like to the max. Like, it's unhealthy. It gets to an unhealthy level pretty fast just because of the culture of the school. So yeah, I just wanted to point that and say, yeah, that's very true in this context because people here take it too far, and I think like there's almost no room to think about anything else. Or grades just becomes like the biggest thing, and if you fail this class or even get like a B, it's like the end of the world or something. And it really feels like that.
Yeah.
Even though intellectually you might know, like it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. And you can already tell like a couple years out of college that it's really not the end of the world.
No, you realize immediately.
Immediately.
When you're applying for jobs, they don't ask for your. A lot of them don't ask for your GPA.
That's what I've been trying to tell you guys.
They really don't. And like pulling an all-nighter for one final spring quarter of second year, no one cares.
No one cares.
Just get the B+. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just submit it.
No,
you know?
even like I will admit I did fail a class, and it did mean I could not major in what I was planning on majoring in. But once again, I graduated.
Look at it now, you know.
And you have a 9 out of 10 satisfaction on your job.
Pretty good job.
Yeah, there's no correlation.
No
correlation.
I
The
pulled
statistics
multiple
minor.
all-nighters. Multiple all-nighters. I lived off caffeine.
She did.
Don't
Confirm.
do
Out of
this,
10,
by the
it
way.
doesn't matter.
I provided the caffeine
She
for
did.
1 out of 4 of those years.
She did.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
so funny. Yeah. What other advice do you have?
I think my advice would be to leave your room. Like, so there's a lot of singles. I wasn't a single my second year in North.
Like in the dorms.
In the dorms, in the dorms. A lot of singles. And I think, kind of like Anezi mentioned, the culture is very like, the go, like stress, all about your studies. And so it's really easy to feel like, oh, everyone else is probably just in their rooms, so maybe I should just stay in my room. And then before you know it, it's been 3 months and you haven't had like a really genuine, interaction with someone. Like, it's so easy to get to that place. And then I think once you get, in a cycle or a rhythm of just staying in your room or staying in that one cubby in like the 3rd floor of the reg, it's really hard to like get out of it. You know what I mean? And it's really hard to, when someone invites you, like, oh, let's meet up for lunch, or if there isn't, like a church event, like the energy it takes to say yes is so much harder when it's been months of saying like, no, I'm just gonna stay in my room, and sometimes it's like to study, but for me a lot of times it was just I just felt so like stressed and so like bogged down that I didn't want to leave my room. You're just in your room.
So you're saying like even if you don't have anything particular right then, like it's
Yeah.
just like the inertia is so strong.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, I don't know if this is something that's felt by a lot of students, but some of my friends felt it and I felt it too, is you kind of just feel bad for not, like when you're not stressed, for not being stressed. Like let's say I, was on top of my stuff that week, submitted everything early, like had nothing upcoming to study for, but everyone else was still studying. Like I felt the need of like, man, you shouldn't just be like lounging around, like read a book, or like get even more ahead, or like research something. You just feel like the need to like
Interesting. Yeah.
be stressed or find stress. And I think sometimes, however you deal with that, like just don't be in your room by yourself. Like be with people, say yes to meeting up with someone for lunch, and like it's hard the first couple of times, but it's a lot better than like it being middle of winter quarter and you're like losing your mind and no one notices because you've been in your room, That was definitely me in second year, and I wish somebody was like, and just get out of North, like get out of the reg, just like take a walk with me or something,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I wonder if, kind of taking the principle of like the atomic habits, like the little things that can make a big difference, like even more granular than that, like might be just to get out like every day for us.
yeah,
Like the I guess daily habit could be something like, even if you don't have a lunch appointment, just get outside of your room and walk around.
Yeah.
And do something that's not quote unquote productive, like towards this one end that UChicago has for you.
yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. Did all three of you guys go? Did
I
you go?
didn't
Oh, okay.
go.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think there's a lot, but I think one thing would be invest in relationships, invest in people. And well, I say this as an introvert, but who hates small talk. But honestly, yeah, even just trying to make small talk with people in your classes, it can go a long way. I think I only started doing that more my senior year when I started to realize, oh, I'm going to graduate soon and people are just going to scatter. They're going to go to all these different cities. Like people are already talking about that and like, yeah, relocating for their jobs or going back to their hometowns, because a lot of UChicago students are not from Illinois or from Chicago per se.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's when I first started making it, I don't know, more of a priority to reach out to people and even just, make small talk, which I really don't like. But yeah, I met a lot of people that way through my different classes, people I wouldn't otherwise ever meet. Like people in your class are kind of random sometimes, especially, I don't know, your senior year or your fourth year when you're taking random classes or just for fun classes. And yeah, I don't know. I think it can also be an opportunity, if you're Christian, like to share the gospel with someone and like, I don't know, invite them out to church and, save, bring someone to Christ. That's pretty big. But yeah, I think it's important because I think I realize it now after graduating, there's not a lot of people my age around anymore. And sometimes it makes me sad. Like, at work, I'm the youngest there. Everyone else is like 25, 28, 30s, 40s, or much older. And I don't know, like they're nice, but I do miss having people my age, which now I realize, oh, I see why people talk about their peers a lot. I don't think I ever understood it during undergrad, like why people, like the staff would talk about their peers and how much they love hanging out with their peers.
Yeah.
And now I finally understand because most of them are gone. And I think I wish I had just talked to more people, more of my classmates, or I don't know, been less shy and just not cared about what they would think or say, but just say hi, make conversation, ask about their life, their story, and share my own story, and then just see what God does with that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because one thing I've noticed, and I have not been sure whether this is a UChicago thing or if it's a private school thing or if it's like a generational thing that's shifted, but at least compared to my college experience, what I've noticed at UChicago is that people seem to have smaller, tight-knit groups of friends. Like the number of friends in the friend group are not very big though. It's like a handful. Whereas I think my experience was more that we all had 3 or 4 like groups of friends that were also bigger in size, but also probably because we went to a bigger school and there's more people, yeah, so then, I probably have like 50 to 60 like strong acquaintances, right? Not like I'm not talking about like close
Whoa.
friends.
Yeah,
But like we
acquaintances,
know stuff about each other, and we have shared memories.
That's
and,
wild.
Wow.
Right. So maybe that's partly a large public school thing, but I have noticed that. So which I think goes to just to support what Gisselle's saying about like, yeah, pushing yourself, like especially as a Christian, right? Like pushing yourself to be the kind of person who's like open, right? And always willing to invite relationship. And I know it's really hard for introverts. Like I'm an introvert too. So
Yeah.
actually, so that made me think of another question, which is this. Okay, so since you have the private school lens, okay, I want to so this might be interesting for some of the postgrads who listen to this. And like, I'm curious because all the staff that you're used to at UChicago, that you've interacted with a good number of them over the years, we all come from a public school background. Okay, so either Berkeley or LA, and
Big schools.
Yeah, big schools. 25,000, 30,000 students.
That's it.
So there's assumptions that we have about ministry, college.
Exciting.
Like
Oh my gosh, hot seat question.
that
Yes.
we bring in, right? What are some differences between being like the assumptions that you've seen us make about what college is like and your experience of college that's different, that would be maybe beneficial for us to understand? Like, oh, like private school students are different in this way. Like, I don't know if anything even comes to mind.
I don't know if it's like, because I've only experienced UChicago, I don't know if it's like, are other private schools like this?
Just come. Yeah.
Or
How
if
about
it's
just speak to UChicago? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I think it was really like speaking to staff, like my first year when I was like, oh my goodness, I'm a nerd. Like I did not, because I think, oh man, we are so unathletic as a university. And I didn't realize that until like we'd play volleyball and I'd be like, oh my goodness, they made contact with the ball.
Wow, they're good.
I was like, oh wow, it went over the net. And we've gotten better.
Yeah. Oh,
We
I
have.
can testify. I can testify. You have gotten much better.
I have like 40% time.
You made it over yesterday.
I know, yesterday went over the net.
It looked good.
Wow.
I saw some of your plays.
But no, first year I feel like, that's just like a small like funny point, but yeah, I was like, wow, they had like fun at college, and like when people like would share their testimonies or whatever, it was like, oh, I was really into like partying, or like I was really into like doing like stuff like that, where I was like, oh, I just had to get out of my room and leave my books, like which it's like a different, it's just a different way of, like getting to like, oh, I don't know, getting closer to Christ and whatever. It's like different things you give up. But I was like, wow, I'm such a nerd.
The struggles were different. Okay.
Struggles were very different.
The range of struggles.
Yeah,
maybe.
And I don't know if you guys have noticed. If you guys have noticed that,
I feel like the opposite.
Really?
Or not the opposite of that, but that the inverse is also true in the sense that, I don't know, people here don't like arguing. Like,
people here as in
the
staff
staff don't like arguing.
Big public schools.
Like, I don't know, at UChicago, it's just like, yeah, you want to talk about whether a hot dog is a sandwich or not? Let's go at it for like 2 hours. And it's like fun, but like, I feel like only Jeanette so far has been like that.
Yeah, all the other staff are like, why are we talking about this?
No, yeah.
This is so dumb.
No, yeah. And I think Gisselle doesn't really like arguing either. So maybe that's just
there's
like a
outliers, I feel
niche,
like.
But
like
most UChicago students
Yeah,
person.
I think Giselle's an outlier in UChicago.
Yeah.
But like even to that point, like with arguments, so like if you take it to like Christianity or talking about God, I feel like at UChicago I found like speaking in Soch or Hume, if like the topic of God came up, like people would share their opinions. Like it was rare to find someone who didn't have an opinion or was scared of sharing their opinion or didn't have an opinion on God. It was always like, well, I think that based on my reading of XYZ philosopher, God is like, whatever. Like they had opinions. And then if you pushed on that opinion or like questioned it, it was an argument, but it didn't feel like, oh my goodness, we're arguing. It just felt like we're intellectually debating and having a nuanced conversation on the metaphysical existence of, that's just the vibe.
That's nice.
And I think speaking or just hearing from like people who went to like a bigger school or other schools, I'm realizing that's unique. Like the types of students who are here and like what they talk about. Granted, I think maybe there's more of a hesitancy to take that like intellectual conversation about God into like a personal application of like, all right, okay, you think God is, evil. Okay, what does that mean personally? Like, what do you think? Like, how does that relate to you and how
Right.
you're, navigating faith or
And
whatever?
that conversation is much harder to
That
have.
conversation's
Yeah.
like really
Yeah.
hard to get there.
Yeah.
But like just talking about God or what are your thoughts? Like
They will cite
immediately, citing
Stuff.
like different philosophers or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember a lot of the staff being extremely intimidated by that because they're like, I don't know how to cite anybody. But I can tell you what I think about God.
No, honestly, it's
MLA
okay.
format.
Yeah, I feel like something I learned throughout UChicago is some people, they seem really confident, but they're just normal people.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
They're normal kids. You don't
Yeah.
have to be intimidated by
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah.
They use big words. Sometimes they don't know what they mean.
No, that's true. People use words that they do not know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and you only start really like noticing that.
Yeah.
Like
When you
like,
learn the meanings
throughout-
of the
when
words.
you know the word and then
like
someone
throughout
says it,
college,
yeah.
and you
Oh.
notice like the first years in your class, and they're using these big words and trying to seem all confident, and you're like,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
I
think
know
they
what
did
that
the
is.
reading.
Yeah. But then first year or when you first meet UChicago students, you're like, oh my goodness, like what were you doing in
They're
high
so
school? How do you know
smart.
all of this? But then by the time I was in like, honestly, even second year, I was like, this is a big word. No one in this class knows what.
Everyone's nodding, but no one knows what this means.
no one.
Let's be real.
No one did the reading. We all skimmed it. Come on, So
Yeah. So
That's funny.
I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe that's one assumption
Yeah.
too. Like, UChicago kids are all super, like they're all confident
Yeah.
to the max, but sometimes they're just, yeah.
Maybe they're just good at looking confident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they are.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we are.
And
We
good
were.
sometimes
at
they
presentation.
overcompensate too, because it's like, when I didn't do the reading, I'm like, okay, I need to know this one point super, super well. And then like, I remember I wrote an essay and then I got feedback on the essay that's like, it was very obvious that you didn't do any of the reading. You like are saying the exact opposite point of what this guy is saying.
Oh gosh.
And so, like, no one ever actually knows
Yeah,
what
that's
the
interesting.
reading says.
Yeah. Actually, okay, to bring it back to like conversations about faith and that point, I realized too, like, and I think I like I fall into this habit too. It's like when you're talking about faith and someone is coming up with a lot of like, I don't know, good arguments about why God is good or why God is real. Like it's really easy to just go to the one like point that you read in that one book about why God isn't real and then bring the conversation to that one point because you can like destroy
Right.
the other person's argument.
Interesting.
But then like there's these like there's like bigger question that the other person like knows a lot more about and you constantly try to distract them from like talking about that bigger thing.
So you think that's like a way that you've been trained to think almost, or
Well, it's just I feel like it's an art, like it's a debate skill.
Okay, okay,
A lot
yeah,
of people did speech and debate,
A lot
and I
of
feel like
people did debate
a lot of
here.
people did debate,
Right.
and so it's like, yeah, when someone's talking about God and they're trying to make it practical and be like, okay, I hear your point. How come, like, you don't live that out, or like, why don't you take that thought to like the logical next step, like, and you know that they really that they're asking you a direct point that you have to like answer, and like they're making a good point. You just try to. You try to steer it away from
Yeah.
that, or even make them second guess their thoughts.
Yeah.
Like it's just all debate. Like it's not
Yeah.
really because I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain.
Well, I think we
the
can
rest of
make a
that.
distinction between like debating for debates, like debating to win the argument versus debating for truth, like trying
Yeah.
to seek the truth, right?
Yeah.
And because I think that's one of the ways in which we've characterized our experience at Chicago, which is that a lot of students are really willing to discuss these matters, but not a lot of people are discussing it so that they can actually land on anything, like
Yeah.
because they're not trying to
Yeah.
figure out what's true. It's just like they just want to have a good discussion, and it's for the discussion's sake almost, which as a minister is really frustrating because you're trying to help these people move along somewhere,
Yeah.
but actually
Yeah.
they're not interested in moving along. They're just interested in having a good talk. Yeah, which is like nice to have a good talk, but then feels like, oh man,
What now?
what? Yeah, like how do I take this person forward? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever told you this. Kind of coming back to characterizations of UChicago students. One of the ways I've explained UChicago students to my fellow people from engineering schools like Berkeley and places like that is that UChicago is a school full of people in your AP English class who raised their hand and responded to the teacher's questions and actually seemed like they knew what they were talking about. Is how I've explained it.
So with that kid.
Yeah, it's a school full of
That kids.
That kids.
No, yeah.
Do you think that's right?
No, yeah. I think
Okay.
Yeah.
I think everyone here, yeah.
Because
Not being
everyone
that
at
kid.
everyone at Berkeley is not that kid.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the other ones.
They're the other kids.
I see.
Yeah, they all went to Berkeley. And then that one kid went to UChicago.
Normal
so-
kids.
Yeah. I did not know that was like the descriptor. Or like when you tried to, you know.
Have you never heard me say that before?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
no.
That's how I've explained it to like people in Berkeley.
I didn't know
Then
that.
they get it. They're like, oh.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good
oh.
descriptor.
Yeah.
but
Talking
I didn't
about
know that was the way.
Aristotle.
Yeah. You're like, what?
I didn't understand what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we can make mean characterizations of Berkeley students too. So, but we're not gonna do
That's
that.
right.
No, yeah.
Such as
right.
like everyone,
Berkeley
all
podcast.
all the people who tried to get into Stanford but didn't make it. So.
Actually, I was a kid who tried to make it into
Oh shit!
Really?
Oh, so you could have been a Berkeley student. You could have fit in at both schools. Nice. So now coming out of your time at UChicago, so can we talk a little bit about like how you guys made the decision to stay at our church, stay in Chicago, and to experience post-grad life, right? So you went through, I guess, what we call like new grad year. I don't know what we call it actually, but you were new grads last year, and you went through PCL, and you were involved in our college ministry still, but served in different ways. So, but that must have been it is a pretty significant decision for most people, where you're going to be after college. So maybe just some words about how you made that decision.
Yeah, it was a hard decision, at least for me. I think more in my second year, I started feeling more like, oh, what these staff are doing, I think I want to do something like this. Like, I can see that this work is meaningful. But then I think COVID distracted from that for a bit. And then coming back to fourth year, it was more real. I had to think about where I was going to be, because I'm from Houston. That's where like my parents and my siblings are. But I didn't really want to go back. I left for a reason. I wanted to, I don't know. I like seeing the world, and like I wanted to see what's it like in other places. Like I didn't want to be stuck in one place. I don't like the idea of just being stationary. So that's why I left. I went out of state for college. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was hard still because I kind of felt guilty, being the first in my family to move out of the house. And then also just being like a girl. I think that's, it's not the norm, especially for Mexican household. Yeah, usually we just stay and like help parents until we get married and stuff. And then, I think it was also hard for my parents to understand. But I think what made me decide to stay was, again, senior retreat, like just taking in that message of, oh yeah, I have this gospel and I have to do something about it. And I don't have a church back in Houston. Like I only started coming out to a church, like getting plugged into a church in college. And this is where I've grown, and I know I can continue growing. And I think it only made sense. I think the only barrier for me was the whole like family and feeling guilty kind of thing. But everything else seemed pretty clear too. I was like, okay, I think this is my church. Like I don't have a church back home. Like what am I going to do when I go back home? I could look for another church, but I think it makes sense to stay here and grow. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. How about others?
Yeah, I didn't actually know what I was going to do after graduation until like right before graduation. Yeah, right before graduation. I didn't know if I wanted to stay in Chicago, if I wanted to go back home, or in my mind, like I was thinking about my uncle's church that I had visited right before my freshman year, and like going there. So I had no idea what I was going to do. But I think for me, it was like, I remember my spring quarter senior year reflecting over like what I had learned spiritually undergrad. And I realized like, I really need community. Like it's not just like a benefit or an added plus. Like I need it for my spiritual growth. I knew that like as someone who did speech and debate, as someone who did like I could convince people that I was like a good Christian. I could convince people like back home, especially my parents or uncles and aunties, like like back home that, yeah, she's coming to church, you know, she leads some youth stuff. She has a good job. She's a solid Christian. Like, I knew I could convince them of that, even though internally I might like be feeling differently, or I might be struggling with something. So something that was really clear to me after reflection was that if I wanted accountability and if I wanted to actually like grow to leave my sins behind, or at least actually have to confront them, like I needed a solid community. And I knew that like with Anezi and Gisselle and like, yeah, the rest of the church here, like people would hold me accountable, and I wouldn't, like it would be a lot harder, right? Like to just pretend to be a good Christian without actually being someone, you know, like it's just harder to pretend, you know? And so I knew I needed that. And so that was one of the reasons why I decided to stay. Another reason was that, so like I had mentioned earlier, but I was really into my thesis. I think similar to Anezi and like, yeah, or like obsessive like personalities, like I was obsessed with my thesis and like my thesis topic. I don't think there's anything else that I've ever felt so like, oh man, this is it. Like I'm so passionate, like I could do this forever. And like I really felt that. And I had like super like grand dreams of like, you know, if I take this all the way, I'm liberating a country. You know what I mean? I'm taking people out of poverty, millions of them, like ending the refugee crisis in the Mediterranean. I am like, you know, like crazy, you know, I mean, those are my aspirations.
Right,
and
right.
I wanted to throw myself fully into that. And in my mind, I was like, that's achievable. I'm smart enough. Like I'm dedicated enough. Like I could do it. But then, yeah, I think spring quarter, senior year, I was reflecting over, my grandfather had passed during COVID, and then my grandmother was like super sick, and I was like, you know, I could give my life to this thesis, but the people I love the most, oh man, they need to make it to heaven. You know, like it just clicked for me as I was like dealing with like family death and family illness, that like there's just nothing on this earth that lasts, you know. And I could do something like, you know, I don't know, like related to my thesis or whatever, and like, you know, say like feed people or whatever, which is good, and I should do that now. But like, people's souls matter. They matter a lot, and I think you really notice it when like someone close to you like passes, and you're just like, oh man, like I should have shared the gospel with my grandfather. Those were the questions I was really thinking about spring quarter. Yeah, and I think it just clicked. There's really nothing else that has more impact, you know, or that like makes life worthwhile. And I think like as like thinking back to or reflecting even over like when I was in a really dark moment, I was like, what's, you know, like like life, should I even live it? You know, like thinking about those questions, like there's really nothing that, at least for me, makes life worth living except sharing the gospel with others, you know, and like giving them the same joy I experienced with Jesus. And so, yeah, I think all of those points were just swirling in my mind spring quarter, senior year. And then I think after I remember talking with Gisselle and Anezi, and in our apartment fourth year, and just coming to that conclusion, like, okay, yeah, I need accountability, and my thesis will not save people. Jesus will. So yes, Jesus, you know.
Okay. So did your decision to maybe stay around in Chicago for another year, did the fact that Anezi and Gisselle, that they were going to be here, was that a big part of?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because you guys could stay together. Like, as a friend group.
And I think by that point, I think Gisselle had like told us, oh yeah, like she's staying by
right after spring.
Yeah, right after senior retreat. Yeah, so I knew Gisselle was staying, and I was like, I had a pretty good like inclination that Anezi was staying too, and I think for me, like, I don't know what my decision would have been if they had said they weren't. Yeah. Just because like in terms of accountability, like it's really easy to be like open and honest with your peers, or like people your age. And so I was like, okay, if accountability matters to me, having Anezi and Gisselle here, like I will be held accountable, you know? And then also like, it's fine. Like I knew it'd be fine, you know? So yeah.
No, I think that's really beautiful that like that was a part of that decision, right? It's sort of, well, here are sisters that I've grown with the past few years, and like we can continue that on, right? And help each other continue to grow. So yeah, really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, Eden and Gisselle were also impactful in my decision as well, although there were kind of like two phases, I guess, of me making my decision to stay in Chicago. So the summer after my junior year, I had an internship, and I had gotten a return offer from that internship, which meant I was basically deciding where I would be the following year, like an entire year ahead of time. Like, I think I need to make the decision by September, whatever, October, whatever. And I was pretty stressed out about it because I had been offered locations everywhere except in the Midwest for where I could take my job offer, which could be like from Seattle to San Francisco to Texas to New York, everywhere except the Midwest. Like, they even offered me like Tampa, Florida, which is literally like in the middle of nowhere.
You're from Florida.
I know. Like, I mean, I'm by there, but still, it's the middle of nowhere, kind of. And so that was kind of like the first part of that struggle of whether I'm going to stay in Chicago here with the church or if I'm going to go back home or go somewhere totally new. And I remember I had spoken to Jeff B., who's now in San Diego. Yeah, because he had made a similar decision the year before on whether to leave to a new place where our church still is, but because he had gotten a church offer there, but
a job.
Yeah, a job. What did I say? Church offer?
I was like, wait, what?
He works for our church.
And so I spoke with him about it, and after talking with him, actually, he was like, either way, you'll probably be fine, like, if you stick with our church, like, because at that point I was thinking of either Seattle or San Francisco, and we have churches in both of those locations. But for me, the people were really important. Just being near people, I think, in general. Like, at first, I didn't really think church specific, like, oh, I'm going to have to look for a new church and all of this, but rather I'm like, oh, these are the people that I've been with these past, like, 4 years, and I've, like, grown the most with them, like, in general. And so I think that I felt that really strong heart attachment because, yeah, I'm generally someone that doesn't like change. But then throughout my 4th year was actually when I kind of felt maybe the more spiritual draw to wanting to stay in Chicago. At that point, I had negotiated to stay in Chicago, and so that decision had already been made. But it didn't really feel like, oh, I'm committing to being in Chicago, but rather I had just decided to be in Chicago. But then in my spring quarter of 4th year with Eden, Gisselle, Jason, and Chathu as well, and yeah, them. Yeah, we just hung out a lot more that quarter. I was going through, just a lot of friend drama at that time, and I was really, really, like, just depressed over it. But it just manifested, like, their friendship manifested in coming over when I didn't feel like leaving my room and inviting me over when I didn't really want to go anywhere. Because for context, they lived, like, just a block away from where I was living my 4th year. But yeah, so I think that that's kind of when I really realized, like, oh, like, the relationships that I have in the church are much more precious than, I mean, I love my friends outside of the church as well, but I think that my friendships in the church are really special and can really push me and just support me in ways that, the world, in its selfish ways, is just not going to support someone unless it supports, like, I don't know, their own end goal. But the church, because we are called to love one another sacrificially, I think that I really got to experience that from Gisselle a lot, in particular because I think after living together 3rd year, we had been kind of going through rough patches. But then 4th year was when I really felt really strongly like, oh no, Gisselle is like my friend, and she's been there for me when a lot of other people haven't been there for me. And so I think that I really experienced that 4th year, which was when I'm like, oh no, this is like actually the right decision that I made, not just because, oh, I negotiated to stay in Chicago, but actually because this is where the people who care about me are and who are going to show me that, like, Jesus's love is a love that I can't live out on my own and is a love that people will not show me. Yet we're called to that kind of love despite how hard it is. And just, kind of just being able to be in that circle of this church, I think, was something that I saw much more as a blessing after that quarter, and just the community of, I guess, I don't know, my peers, even though Chathu and Jason are not my peers.
It was Alex.
Alex too, Alex.
I know, we should have Alex on this too.
I know.
Oh my gosh, cross-state D-pod.
No, that would have been fun if I had the foresight to do that.
Yeah. Hey, another time.
You can edit him in.
He gets his solo episode.
Yeah, for context, Alex is one of their peers who was a new grad here last year, and then we recently sent him off to Emory because he's doing grad school there. So man, so it's your first Not your first. What are you? Okay, so you're your second years now. So you had your whole first year out of college already. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on what that was like. Okay, so maybe something that was like, something you learned through that time, like something that you enjoyed, something that was surprised me with some insight about your first year out of college.
More wisdom.
More wisdom. There was a lot of things that were surprising. Yeah, I feel like I didn't live with Anezi and Gisselle third year, and so it was my first time living with both of them new grad year, and it was there was a lot of learnings. It's just really good for getting to know yourself. Like I was so surprised. I was like, dang, I didn't know this about me. Like all the time, new grad year. Like, living with people. And I think when you're not distracted by classes, like a lot more stuff comes out.
Interesting.
And so, or like, you just have time. Like, when you clock out at 5 p.m., I'm like, man, like, what now?
Yeah.
And then it's like in those moments, like interacting with people that you're like, oh man, I'm like this, or people will just tell you, hey, have you ever noticed that you're like this, And then you're like,
nice.
Oh, shoot, yeah, that's true.
Nice. Speaking the truth in love.
Yeah, in love. So that was surprising. And then another thing that was super surprising was, so like after graduation, people scattered, like, for jobs in like the West Coast, East Coast, whatever.
You're talking about like your UChicago friends.
Yeah, UChicago friends. Yeah, a lot of people scattered. And like in undergrad, I think my friend groups like outside of church knew I was Christian. Like I was very like, sorry, I'll be late to meeting. I have church at this time. Or like, I am going to Bible study. Sorry, I'll have to miss the party. Like stuff like that. Like they knew I was Christian. And I was very surprised that like for most of them, it was only after graduation that they were like, hey, remember that time you mentioned Jesus? And then they would actually
interesting.
Like ask me. And I was like, where was this when we were in person? Like where were these questions when I was like, in Baker with you, like, but yeah, I would say most of my friends, like those questions came out like after graduation in new grad year when like the jobs that we all dreamed about, like didn't pan out to be as 10 out of 10, or when grad school was hard or like, when like college relationships didn't last into like, like romantic relationships didn't last into new grad, for them new grad year or whatever.
Right.
It was then when like they'd reach out and be like, wow, Eden, like from the friends from undergrad, like Eden was someone I didn't have a lot of drama with. Like, wow, and like Eden is someone who's like now reaching out to me even after I've moved across the country. And so then they'd ask about Jesus and I'd be like, where was this third year when I was like in person? Yeah. Or not third year, but like fourth year when I was in person with you.
Right.
So that was super surprising. And I mean, I don't know how I'm navigating that because it's really hard with distance.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, so this goes back to advice for current undergrads. Your friends should at least be aware that you are Christian because when they have questions, like if they don't know any Christians, it's really hard, so they should at least know that you're Christian and you should like be nice, like show like a good image of what a Christian friend is like because when hard times hit, like they'll think about it, and like, it's crazy, but they will after graduation. So if you like, I would really like the high bar is share the gospel with your friends, like directly, all your friends before they scatter. But like, if not that, they should at least know like you're Christian.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, kind of just these people that you used to be like in contact with every day. Some of my friends stayed in Chicago, and something that I realized maybe 4 to 5 months after we had all started work, maybe, I started hearing from them that they all felt very aimless or very lost, and they were going through just either they were like curious about Christianity or they were just, expressing their kind of just frustration with, oh, I'm working, I'm doing what I thought I should be doing. I'm like, I don't know,
consulting.
A consultant, like something that's taking up almost all my time, something that's keeping me busy, and I'm ultimately like making money, but what am I doing with my life? It feels very, just aimless, very like there's nothing coming out of it, I guess. And when I hear that, I very much don't relate, but I think that I was really surprised by it because I didn't expect for them to feel that way and for me to feel actually, oh no, I have many things to do because I am with this church, reaching out to people constantly, like involved in students' lives. Like, I think that, yeah, something that maybe an assumption of what Christian life will be like, and something I'm sure that I thought too as well when I'm thinking, oh, I can't make it to these events, is, oh, I'm giving this up and my life is just going to be full of church and I'm going to be like bored at the end of the day or whatever. But no, like, because I give up maybe, I don't know, some random like dinner one evening, I'm actually able to not only like reschedule that dinner whatever time, you know, but also spend time with students doing like dealing with eternal matters, I guess. And that's given me more meaning than I think I would have really realized on my own. Like, I think I just really needed a perspective check in that sense where, yeah, the life that I'm living is very unique. I don't think many people like live like our church does. And even so, like, I'm sure DP, like, you live a very different life than I do too. But yeah, something I've never really heard is that, oh, I like have nothing to do. No one is bored. No one feels like the things they're doing.
There's always someone to love, you know?
Yeah. Someone to love. There's always someone to tell about the gospel, things like that. And I think I've really gained an appreciation for that. But yeah, that's something that I realized that my friends are also realizing, like, oh, they don't have something that they can say, oh, I'm making an eternal change. I'm investing into a God that cares about me and cares about the world. And I think that that has also added into why I, feel this burden for my friends much more this past year, because I've heard about the types of, I guess, existential struggles in that sense of what they've started to feel. And even though you might think when you're graduating, oh, I want to be like these people that are consultants and making double my salary. Yeah. But when I look at it now, I'm really grateful for just the way that even if I make half of their salary, like that, like I have a very solid purpose in this life. And I know that what I'm doing, even if I do it badly, really matters and is pleasing to God. So just really gained an appreciation from the gospel and realized that people notice that too in their own lives. They can notice that something is missing.
Yeah. That's super interesting, actually, that both of you have shared that experience of like people, like you're noticing your friends already having that kind of angst. And something I think about sometimes is that, like, I think before I like really started to follow the Lord freshman year of college, I had a lot of daily existential angst about what my life was about. And I think I've actually kind of forgotten what that feels like. So, because I have to like kind of try like really hard to remember what it felt like. And so then I don't think I realize how much peace I have on a day-to-day basis until I talk with someone who's able to express that to me again. Yeah. And then it sort of allows me to tap into, oh yeah, I remember when I used to feel like that. Like what is life for? Like what am I doing? Like why am I trying so hard? Right? Like, but yeah, like because of that purpose, like, you know, Anezi, that you're referring to, and like, you know, one way to put it is like, oh yeah, we're never bored, or like, there's always something to do, right? And you know, Eden mentioned loving people, like, and also serving, right? If you're willing to be a servant, like you'll always have a job description, because you know there's also hundreds of millions of ways to serve. So like there's all these things we can do, and we can lay it unto the Lord, and you know, and he'll receive it as a sacrifice, right? So yeah, I think that's, yeah, those are good observations. Yeah, Gisselle, any thoughts?
Those are pretty good. Yeah, I guess something that was surprising was how free I am as a post-grad. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but it is very free compared to being a student at UChicago. I feel like I just had more time to think and reflect. And yeah, I think like Eden said, like really get to know myself, living with my roommates, and I don't know, just having that free time to actually reflect on why I did something or said something. Yeah, it's helpful. It's a little scary, but it is helpful. I think, yeah, on that topic of existential dread, I think I experienced some of it, which was also surprising. I did not expect myself to kind of go back to that state. But I mean, it was humbling. And I think it also brought me back to truth of why I'm here, why I'm Christian, why I stayed at this church, why I'm involved with this ministry that lives that really tries to live out, you know, the faith and the Great Commission and actually obeys Jesus rather than just, you know, going to a consumer church or something like that. Yeah, I think for me it was when I started work, and I don't know, on the way back from work, I would just ask myself, like, wow, why? I don't know, why am I doing this? Like, yeah, I just come back from work and I'm really tired. I don't know how the staff does all this, but here we are, I guess, one day at a time. Yeah, it was humbling. I don't know. I think after graduating and then doing SLT, I felt really like, go, go, go. Yeah, I'm so excited for ministry. Let's go. Let's give it my all. And then I realized, oh, yeah.
The reality of daily life hit you.
Yeah, daily life.
Daily life is pretty
can be
monotonous in some ways, right? Like it's the same thing every day.
Yeah.
Same alarms.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there would be those times when I don't want to think, especially like commutes back home. So I would just sleep and try not to miss my stop. But yeah, I think that was surprising. Yeah, I did not expect myself to be very existential that year, especially those first few months of starting work. But yeah, I think it was good. It grounded me back in the truth, and it made me think and really process and remember, oh yeah, this is why I stayed in Chicago. Oh yeah, this is why I'm doing ministry alongside, you know, a day job. I'm not just going home and watching Netflix and resting, quote unquote. My idea of resting, yeah, it's different from what my coworkers are doing, and it feels a little crazy sometimes. But yeah, I think just having that space to think was very helpful too.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. You know, as I think about the three of you, you know, and you know, you attended our all team retreat this past summer, you know, with the intention of joining team, and yeah, it's neat to hear your perspective and your stories. And I know I asked you about like why you chose to stay, and I just want to make it clear to people listening that, you know, it's not like we expect everyone to stay at our church. I mean, I happen to be talking with 3 people who did, and so that's why I'm asking that question. But man, there's plenty of people that we've ministered to, that we've, you know, loved here in Chicago church over the years, that we've blessed to go and, you know, move on to the next thing. Even Alex, like, man, it was sad like to have him move, because we love Alex, but you know, like, you know, he has grad school in Emory, and so we went and sent him off, and we even did a little vision trip down there to see what the campus is like. And actually Emory is very beautiful, not as beautiful as Berkeley, but you know, pretty close. Everything has to compare back to Berkeley. So but I'm really thankful for how God's really worked in each of your lives, and I see it. I see how God's working and continuously shaping you. So maybe I think we need to try to wrap things up here. So maybe the one final question is like, what's just been like a highlight so far for you as a postgraduate member of our church? So just anything from graduation till now. What's been one highlight for you?
I was actually sharing this with Anezi and Gisselle earlier, but I think in thinking about, like my life as a minister, or like sharing the gospel as like being the priority, I think something that I, at the back of my mind, always worried was like, will there be like that sweetness with Jesus though? Like that individual, like sweetness with Jesus and like whatever. And the answer is yes. It's actually like, I think there's hard parts about new grad year and like not being a student and being like an adult and like trying to fit in, like sharing the gospel with people. But there's just so much sweetness as well. I mean, that like in ministry, it's not just you, like, it's not like Jesus gives you the Great Commission. It's like, you know, share the gospel with people alone. Like he's there with you too, you know, and it's actually so exciting. And I think that as I like look around at the people here at Anezi and Gisselle, like there's just so much sweetness, like just joy, you know, that comes out of, just saying yes to Jesus. And then, just like during PCL, we talked about something called lingering conversations and always being okay with like, you know, I don't know, like dinner is scheduled to end at 8 p.m., but people are still talking at 8:05. Like, let me listen to what they're talking about. And you know, like lingering conversations. Yeah. And at first I was just like, man, what is this? Like,
what is this lingering you speak of?
And I'm a J, my Myers-Briggs. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm not that J. But when lingering conversations came up, I was like, if it ends at 8.
I mean, can we just end it at 8?
Yeah, why are we lingering and talking? You know what I mean? I got to go to bed, you know?
At 8 p.m.?
No.
Oh my goodness.
At 8:05, actually.
Yeah. But like, yeah, but you know, there's sweetness in those moments. Like, and that's part of ministry. Like, part of ministry is like, yeah, just spending time with other Christians, like sharing ups and downs and like going down like random, you know, conversation trails and like whatever. Yeah, I think when I think about like comparing me in high school and comparing me now, I'm like, oh man, there's just so much joy in community. You know, it's not just like, yeah, Jesus calls us into community because it's good. It's like, it's also joyful, you know, like he also has a lot of joy in store. And it's something that I wish that I could just you be like receive the community, like joyful, like there's just so much joy, like
feel it now.
It's hard to explain, you know, it's hard to explain, but I'm just like, oh man,
just to be there,
you should have been there, you know, there's so much joy. I
mean, like because the things that sometimes God asks us to do is so counterintuitive to our own desires, but when we do it, we actually realize, oh yeah, that was nice. And not only was it nice, but it's joyful, right? And fills you with this deep sense of joy. So
Yeah, I think for me, what I've been able to really appreciate is just having more extended time with the staff and kind of feeling that even if, I don't know if the divide actually exists, but I feel it. When I was a student versus staff, it's like, oh, I'm a student and I stay down here, whereas staff, you're up there. But I think now that we've graduated a little bit and we're all working together, especially the people who work from home, we're usually together at least 3-4 days out of the week, the whole day, working together in the same space. And I think that's how I really got to know Amy and Huna in particular really well. So sad to see Amy go. But yeah, I just really cherish those times where I got to really see, like Huna, for example, who's been at UChicago since our second year. So 4 years now, maybe. Kind of just seeing how our relationship has evolved. And even this past year where it feels like we're a little bit closer, like we're able to share a little bit more about ourselves and we're able to just speak a little bit more honestly to each other. And I think that that's been something that I've really been able to appreciate. And same with like Kata and Vivian, who, because I guess not only were they staff, but they were also like my leaders at some point. And so I think that was also another layer where it felt like, oh, like they're a little bit more divided from me. But I think this past year, I kind of got to see those walls break down a little bit more and just really get to see these people not as, oh, they're church staff, but they're actual people and people who were open to me and I can be open with them as well. So I've really been able to, just appreciate each person's personhood, especially with the new people joining our team, just getting to meet them and spend more time with them as well, and really getting to know them in a new context that isn't just a student-staff, I guess, relationship is.
Yeah.
It's different. I was also going to mention, like, I really enjoyed getting to know the staff more, and I think just getting closer to them, like how Anezi described. But I think, also for me, a highlight has been, or it was, getting closer to peers, like getting to know my peers and getting closer to them, both here, you know, in Chicagoland, but also, and, you know, like Anezi and Eden, but also like across like the network, I guess. Just through things like PCL or like ATR or, you know, Philippines mission trip. It's been fun. I think it's very encouraging just seeing other people my age and I don't know, kind of seeing that, I'm not crazy. You know, like these people are very zealous and I can learn things from them, from each of them. I think, every single person is very different and I really enjoy that. I think that's always a highlight for me, like just getting to learn their story and learn from them and be encouraged by them. And I really enjoyed PCL too. That's post-college life, right? I really enjoyed it. I love the content. I think there's a lot to think about. I love lingering conversations. It was very practical, very heady as well at times. But I think I really liked just getting to see like Chicago peers more often, like once a week, and getting to look forward to that one day a week. I think every week I would look forward to Tuesday or
Yeah.
whatever day it was, just because I would see my friends. That's how I came to see them. Like, yeah, I get to see my friends, and I don't know, just talk about life, or just be real with each other. So I really looked forward to those times, and I don't know, just seeing my friends. So that was a highlight of new grad year, especially when I was going through like the existential thoughts. I think that was very grounding, just getting to talk to peers and be encouraged by them.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Hey, do you have any questions for me? Like, I guess since we're here.
Yes, I do have a question. Okay, so we've talked about our experiences undergrad and how like we've been spiritually formed and changed and, you know, have grown, and then postgrad. But then you have the unique perspective of like being a pastor, like watching us grow, you know, and making that transition. What is one advice you have uniquely shaped to UChicago graduates from this church whose names rhyme with Anezi, Gagden, and Gisselle?
And Gisselle? Oh.
Yeah. Like,
I wonder who these are.
I don't know.
Random names.
You're saying advice for them right now.
Yeah, knowing us, like
knowing them right now.
Yeah.
Those like hypothetical people.
Hypotheticals.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, so I do have the vantage point of having seen the three of you, and it's kind of my first impression of Eden was like, I just remember when I moved here and we were planning for welcome night, people kept saying, "Oh, Eden can do this like
Oh no.
like poetry slam or something, like spoken word, like so that was my first impression. I was like, Eden's the one who does the spoken word."
Yeah.
And so, you know, that was and then I actually don't remember what my first impression of Anezi was. But I think it must have been something related to K-pop. I'm pretty sure, or dance or something. And then I just remember with Gisselle, it was like, I just thought you were like a super core regular student because you just started coming out sophomore year, I guess, when I first moved here. And then I remember I talked with some of the staff who had been at UChicago. They're like, "Oh, who's coming out nowadays?" I was like, "Oh, you know, like Gisselle, like, you know, she's there." They're like, "Gisselle? Gisselle comes?"
Gisselle?
Like, why are you so?
You mean Gisselle?
Oh, sorry, Gisselle. Gizzelle's like they're all every time. I'm like, they're like, "Jizz." So then I was like, "Oh, okay, she must not have ever come last year." So yeah, those are my early memories of you. But yeah, so as I think about, oh man, what advice I have for you, not you, these hypothetical people
Whose names happen to rhyme.
Yeah, I think the reason I was struggling with this is because I feel like what I want to say sounds so basic, but it's basically just read a lot of God's word. That
Basic.
It's so basic. That's why I was like, okay, there's got to be something more clever, but I just feel like that's what it ultimately comes down to. If you're someone who enjoys the presence of the Lord and enjoys like a lot. And Eden, you shared from this verse in Colossians, right? Like when we were sharing from this, let the word of God dwell in you richly, right? Yeah, like I think it's that. I think it's I think that's the core. It starts with everything, right? And so then, you know, and that's the same advice I would give to like an undergrad, or that's the same advice I'd give to our most experienced staff, right? And that's the advice that I need to keep hearing. Like, and you'd be surprised. Like, I mean, you know, like the full-time leads we gather, and you know, what are the exhortations that we receive? Read your word, like read the word, pray, you know, spend time doing these basic things that are the first to go often, right? And so we just need to be constantly reminded of those basic things. So, and if you do that, then everything else will follow, I feel like. So, yeah. Sorry, I don't have anything more novel for you.
No, that's good. Hey, back to the basics.
Yeah,
Foundation.
back to the basics.
It's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Amen.
All right, let's end with this. Okay, why don't you give some shout outs, okay? Some shout outs to people who have been part of Chicago Church, maybe who are not here anymore, but just some whatever rapid fire shout outs, and we'll end with that.
Dang, rapid fire. I wasn't ready for
No,
fast.
I'm going to join. I already asked a question.
Yeah, join.
Yes.
So on this list, we've got David Lee.
Oh, yeah?
Hey, shout out to David.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should.
Yeah, we were there at your farewell.
Yes, we were. Shout out to you. Joanna, Anna, Kaylee,
the
OGs,
Aurora,
the
book table.
Aurora, thank you for noticing the cross necklace.
Noticing Eden's necklace.
Yes.
Cynthia, She wasn't here, but I
No, shout
remember
out to
her first year.
Yeah. Shout out to Noah King. He was here.
He was here.
Nolan. Shout out to Nolan. Shout out to Nolan.
Nolan. Yes.
Nolan.
Shout out to Hannah Park.
Yeah.
Hannah.
Love you, Hannah. Leisha and Stella.
Shout out to
Leisha
Leisha
and Stella.
And their 2 babies. Shout out to the babies.
So cute.
Love the babies.
Well,
Amy and Ben.
Shout out to
Amen.
Ben.
Shout out to Amen.
Oh my god.
What's his name? Ben Giannis?
What?
Ben Giannis.
Ben Giannis. Ben Giannis. Ben Giannis.
Ben
Who is
Giannis.
that? Who is that?
A basketball
That's his
player.
basketball nickname.
I mean,
Oh.
yeah.
Oh, I see.
Like, I'm
Who
like
else?
thinking of all the farewells. You know, shout out to Alex.
Yeah,
Alex
our
and
peers.
Lauren.
Lauren.
Yeah.
Killing it
Missing
at
you.
grad school.
Truly.
Good
6
luck
to
in
9
grad
p.m.
school, guys.
classes. You got it. Because I don't.
DP, do you have shout outs? You have to help us.
Shout
We
them
don't
out.
want to
Shout
miss,
them
we don't
out.
want to miss a single person.
I had totally shut off my brain.
That's all the people I had.
I don't even know who you mentioned so far. If they, but as whenever you're done, you can just start the acapella outro whenever you want.
So bad.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for the D-Pod episode today. Hope you enjoyed the conversation with Age and all the insights that they have about UChicago and their own experience of graduating and joining our church. So see you next time.